Hello. Welcome to this webinar featuring great ideas for publicizing your Active Aging Week events. Active Aging Week is held every year in the last full week of September. It's a unique event in that you, as a host, you decide what events you're going to offer and how many to offer. Of course, once you plan all those events, you want people to attend them and you want others to take notice. And today, you will receive advice from the experts at Glenn Agency on how to promote your events. My name is Pat Ryan. I work with ICAA, and I'll be your moderator for today's presentation. I have a few reminders for you, but before I launch into those, I do want to give a thank you to the sponsors of Active Aging Week who provide a lot of free resources and plenty of support for the program. This webinar is being recorded. You will receive a link to the recording that will be on the Active Aging Week website in a few more days. The PowerPoint slides of the presenters are on the handout that was attached to your reminder email from yesterday. You got it yesterday, probably this morning. And if you haven't downloaded it already, you may want to sort through your email box to access it. On the lower left side of the screen is a chat box. Place your questions and comments in that box, hit send, and the presenters will answer as many as possible at the end of the presentation. After we get started, I'm also going to put into the chat box the numbers or an email to call if you have any problems with your audio or visual, and our customer care folks will help you out. Now, I'm really happy to introduce today's presenters, Brandy Towns and Jeff Bell. Brandy is the Associate Director of Public Relations at Glenn Devens. She leads strategic communication programs for clients in senior living, and that includes everything from creating content and sharing compelling stories to planning big milestone events at communities. Very important for Active Aging Week relevance. Jeff, he's a public relations senior account executive. After more than a decade as a radio news anchor, now Jeff chose the field of senior living, and he really likes to tell the stories and sharing the experiences of older adults as well as the communities that are their homes with both news media and the public. And Jeff's experience on both sides of the news is going to be very helpful for us today. So I'm happy to welcome them, and let's get started. Hi, Brandy. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Pat.
Hi, Pat.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you, International Council on Active Aging, for inviting Jeff and I to speak. Before we get started, I wanted to give you a brief background on Glenn Devens. For those of you who may not be familiar with us, we're a full-service marketing and advertising agency that specializes in senior living. We work with more than 150 communities from across the country, and we provide consultation and strategy on direct response, brand management, digital, creative, media planning, event planning, and Jeff and I are part of the public relations team. So we're going to do our best today to equip you with a number of ideas for promoting and sharing events and happenings that are taking place at your community during Active Aging Week. So we'll cover three main objectives today. The first being how you can promote Active Aging Week through media relations. So you're planning all of these fantastic events throughout the week, and we're going to take a look at how you can promote them and share stories about all the great things you're doing to the larger audience via the media. Secondly, we'll discuss why it's important and how you can use your own marketing channels to raise awareness about the events, the activities, celebrations, and connections taking place during Active Aging Week. And finally, we'll discuss ideas for partnering with the greater community to help broaden the appeal of your planned activities. So as I mentioned, Jeff and I specialize in public relations, which includes the following key areas, a few of which we'll focus on today. But first is media relations, which we think will be very helpful to you during your Active Aging Week, reaching out to those reporters in your area who can help share your story. community relations, and social media, which we also believe is an important part of your strategy and something we'll focus on today. And then as part of our team, we also handle crisis communications and reputation management, event planning, consultation, and speaker recruitment, as well as video content and messaging. And we exclusively specialize in senior living, so we know the consumer market and the habits very well. And we have a good understanding of how these PR tactics can build awareness among your target audience, influence key stakeholders, and help tell your community story. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff now to talk more on media relations.
Well, hi, everyone. And as Pat mentioned, I am a former reporter, so I have a little bit of background that puts me in a unique position to sort of understand media relations from both sides. Your first step is going to be just to get to know the media. That means who's going to get you the coverage that you're looking for. So it's the who, the what, the when, and the where. The media in the last 20 years has changed dramatically, probably the biggest change we've seen since the invention of radio. It used to be the big three: newspaper, television, radio. That's what you went for. That's where you got your news. Well, now the media, as all of you know, is everywhere. Even the big three have a greater presence. Some stories are just for social media. There are internet-only stories, bloggers, web-only news sites, trade publications, trade websites. The game has really changed. And when I say social media-only stories, what I mean is ABC News, for instance, there are stories they will only post to their Facebook page. Those are stories that don't go out on their regular nightly newscast or even on their website. So it's a question of really understanding that change, understanding that it's a big change, and sort of how to utilize that to your advantage. So we ask the question, how's your media compass? What do you know in your area in terms of print? Who are the big newspapers in your area? Who covers your area? Who are the television stations? Who are the radio stations? And then knowing what we know and what we just discussed, you want to branch out from there. Who are the freelancers? Who are the bloggers? What are the social media individuals or places that you're going to want to look? Other places on the web, trade sites, things like that. You really want to get a grasp of who the people are you're reaching out to. And more than that, you want to ask yourself, who do I want to cover me? You know, who are the television stations who've done interesting features that I think would be relevant to what we're doing and therefore might be interested in covering some of our stuff. So once you've got your list, you really become a salesman, birth of a salesman. You have to think like the media. So you're selling to the media. So what are they looking for in a story? You kind of put on your reporter hat. And from my standpoint, as a former reporter, anytime I send a news release out, a media pitch, that's what I think like as I'm writing, as I'm putting the story together. What's going to grab their attention? Newsrooms get, depending on the size, could be hundreds of press releases a day, if not more. How do you make yours relevant? How do you make yours one that that reporter or that editor or that news director is going to look at and say, I think I'll pass this on to another reporter or to an editor or to a writer, and make it something that you're going to be interested in moving forward with. So think about that. Think about stories you've read or even stories that have featured your community in the past. You know, what are they going to be interested in, and use that to your advantage. Sell, sell, sell. And then you get the opportunity to influence the message. Once you've written your release, once you've sent it, you don't just want the event covered. You want your community to be the story as well. So how do you weave that into the release or the pitch? And then maybe even more importantly, when the media arrives, how do you best showcase the community? How do you make an impression for them? Make them want to say great things about you. Again, put your reporter hat on, sort of the old treat them the way you'd want to be treated. Be hospitable, be warm. You know, and that's going to play a really, really big role in the overall media relations process. Now, as I mentioned, there have been tons of changes, and so because of the social media presence, it gives communities an advantage when it comes to the media that we've never really experienced before. And I'm going to turn it over to Brandy to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and as you start to identify those folks that you're going to share your message to the media, you could go ahead now and get a good handle on who you want to share with and start building those lists of media folks and their social media handles so you can start connecting with them and following the stories that they're writing. So maybe that you have a better chance to get your stories picked up. And while media relations is certainly a tactic that we'd recommend using, and one that we know would garner a great deal of impressions and awareness about your community during Active Aging Week, I believe I was looking at the website, there were more than 500 news stories in some capacity that were shared about Active Aging Week alone last year. So another good place to start would be by going to the website, reading through some of the content that was published or that was shared, and start evaluating it, what has been successful, what hasn't been successful for you and others in the past, and build your plan based on that. But you don't just want to rely on the media to tell your story. We'd also recommend using your own stories and messages and posting them on channels you own, such as your website and social media, Facebook and YouTube. Leverage the technology and the own media that is available. And you still have some time to create some quality content focused on stories about Active Aging Week at your community that you could strategically share leading up to the actual week to get people excited during the week and then also following the week. So the content could be designed around this year's theme, Live Your Adventure. Audience engagement is also important to helping to share your message even further. We'd encourage you to join in social media if you haven't already. So for senior living communities, start with setting up a Facebook page or really enhancing your Facebook page and using that as a tool to tell your the events that are going on at Active Aging Week and to share your stories that you have surrounding that. So if you get media coverage, share the links of the positive stories via Facebook and on your website or in an email. Play the TV news coverage for your residents, for board members, and others to get them and keep them excited. Or maybe you ask a TV personality to support your cause personally and participate in the activities while he or she is reporting. Another idea would be to feature a resident or members who are living their adventure on your organization's Facebook page once a week leading up to Active Aging Week. Then during the week, you could create a visual representation of all the residents who are living their adventure and make it a fun theme that you promote not just during that week, but during the couple of weeks leading up to it or the months leading up to it with a daily feature. And don't forget to promote your events on Facebook. You can either invite people to attend by creating and sharing events on Facebook and adding a link back to your website for them to RSVP, and that is, of course, if they are open to area seniors. And if it's an event that is by invitation only, then take lots of candid and action photos and then post them on Facebook featuring the highlights. And we've even had reporters on different occasions reach out to us after seeing posts on Facebook from events or from stories that we've told about seniors who are, who live the Active Aging message and asking if they could cover it or share our post or reach out to that individual and feature them in their next issue. So just by posting on Facebook and keeping ongoing presence and communicating your message, you could see some rewards from just doing that. So you have the opportunity to use 3 different channels for promoting your content and stories, and we'd recommend having a strategy for each one of these and having them synced up to work together. So the first is owned media, and that's going to be your website, social media, videos, all the content and the platforms that you own and that you manage and have control over what messages get posted there. And then secondly is the earned media, and that's the media relations that Jeff was talking to and the blogger outreach and the stories that you have great stories and you're asking others to help share you, your influencers, to help share the message. And then third is the paid media, and those are placed advertisements both online and offline that can work together to help get your message out to a larger audience. So these 3 categories are all very important in your promotion, and they should work together to reach your target audience.
So when we're talking about what you're going to put out there in terms of the stories you want to share, what do we think of when we think of the heart of a good story? It's the people. If you read John Steinbeck, you think about the characters in that story more than anything else. And it's the same thing when you're sharing a story with the media. For Active Aging Week, there's no question the story is going to be about certain activities. But to make it a good story, it has to be about the people. You want to make people the central focus. Maybe it's a jogging group. Well, who are the people? How did they get this started? Maybe there's a heartwarming backstory. Maybe someone lost a friend and it inspired them to get in shape. Those are the stories the media loves. I can tell you as a former reporter, the stories that involve the people, that have those heartwarming backstories or an interesting niche, those are the ones that are going to get coverage over and over again. That's what your focus needs to be, is the people. So you ask yourself this question over and over again: what's worth reading about? What's worth watching on the news? Today, more than ever before, people have seemingly unlimited access to news and information. Why do they want to read your story? What makes it special? Ask that question. Put yourself, instead of, in this case, as I mentioned before, in the reporter's chair, put yourself in the viewer's chair, the reader's chair. If you're online, what are the stories you want to read about? If you're watching the evening news, what are the stories you want to see? Tailor everything to that. This is a great example. It's a community that we've worked with in New Jersey, and this gentleman who's featured teaches an Apple workshop to fellow residents. It's a nice story, but there's no guarantee of coverage with just that. So we nicknamed him iHenry, tying it in with the iPhone, the iPad. He's the Apple guru. Now it's a great story. Just that simple touch changed it from a story about computer classes to a story about the person, about the people. Henry's the guru. He's the sensei. He's the next big thing. And the next thing you know, there's television coverage. It's on Twitter. We're on Facebook. The story's everywhere. Everybody's happy. And it just took that simple little tweak of making it more than just a story about computer classes, and it becomes its own thing, and it takes off. You want stories that resonate. The article on this slide was a lady at a community who was a language teacher for her whole life, and in her 90s, she decided to take up art. She found she had a special talent and started hosting her own shows. When people read this, they get inspired. This is a story that resonates. So what are some other Active Aging Week stories that you have that resonate? We recommend looking at group activities, individual senior feats, active technology, Nintendo Wii, for instance. A lot of seniors have gotten involved with that. That's interesting. Anything that breaks aging stereotypes. Unique groups and clubs involving older adults. Notable older adults who are staying active. It's about what resonates with the media, what's going to resonate with the viewership, because you've got to remember, the media, the question they're asking is, what's going to keep the interest of my viewers or my readers? If I'm a television station, I want ratings. What's going to keep ratings? Stories that resonate. So it's a big circle. And coverage also leads to more involvement, leads to residents being interested in your community, and as the Pew Research Center tells us, once they're online, most older adults make internet use a regular part of their lives. That ties right back into what we're talking about of the media expanding well beyond the big three. Seniors aren't just watching television or reading the paper. They're online. They're reading blogs. They're going to websites. And all of this leads to seniors being more interested. They're taking part. They're getting active, and it's just another way of promoting your Active Aging Week activities. So what are some key questions you should be asking as you get into this week coming up at the end of September into early October? What Active Aging Week events are happening at your community? That's the starting point. What are we doing? And out of there, we can find out what we want to promote. Well, what makes them stand out? What's unique about them? Are there any unique resident stories that go along with these events? Again, people being the heart of a story. Why should someone not directly involved be interested in these stories? And when you're putting all of this together, how do you tailor that to them? How do you get someone who maybe doesn't have an immediate interest in active aging interested in what's going on? Are there unusual photo opportunities? Think outside the box. It's really as simple as that.
Okay, so Jeff shared some great examples of how to garner media coverage as well as story ideas that really resonate with people. But most importantly, what we found is that it's important to have fun with your planning and your promotion. So if you're excited about it, then your residents are going to be excited about it, and the rest of your staff members and team members are going to be excited about participating and having fun with it as well, which makes for a better story. So here's an example of a community that we worked with in Phoenix a while back when Gangnam Style was the dance craze. And we discovered that a group of ladies from a boot camp class at the community were really curious as to what this craze of Gangnam Style was all about. And they wanted to learn the dance and see if they could try it out for themselves. And so they went and they found the wellness director and they asked her and she said, sure, why not? So she learned how to do Gangnam Style and then she taught the ladies, I think there were a dozen more of them, and while we were there visiting the community, we got wind of the ladies taking part in this, and we decided to share it to the media because we thought it was something that they would find very fun and exciting and different from the norm. So it was something the community was already doing, and we just leveraged it by sharing it with an external audience. So soon thereafter, we got coverage on the local TV station. And then, sure enough, Fox and Friends was shooting coverage of the ladies dancing Gangnam Style live at the community a couple of weeks later. So that opportunity, of course, of live coverage, national coverage, doesn't come around often, but it certainly showcased this particular community as living up to what active aging is all about, and something for you to think about what your community might be doing that it goes along with a trend that is outside of senior living or something that's different from other communities who are in your area or who are in the United States. What are you doing different that has media appeal? And here's another example of a partnership that has garnered a great deal of media coverage and social media buzz over the past few months. A community in California partnered with a nearby university, and they created the Senior Dog Squad, which is a group of older adults who auditioned for a dance team that was sponsored by the senior living community. So cheerleaders now regularly come to the community to practice with their residents and teach them new dance moves to popular songs. Then this group of active older adults, they perform at select home football and basketball games at the university, and they are quite the showstoppers and sending a very positive message about how the community supports active aging to a larger audience. So they've been featured in the Alumni magazine, which goes out to a lot of potential leads for their community. The local newspapers and TV stations have, of course, covered stories about them, and their story has been shared all over social media. Flyers were placed throughout the community to create initial excitement, and then they post when the community will be performing at the games. And then, of course, Jeff mentioned that it's all about the people. So rather than just announcing this affiliation and this partnership, we identified and pitched that there was a resident who you can see at the right-hand side of your page or of your slide, and she celebrated her 91st birthday by dancing at the halftime show and was featured in a big story that went out to chamber members as well as local TV stations. So a good story all about her dancing into her 90s at the halftime show. But it turned out to be a really beneficial partnership when it comes to spreading their message of encouraging and supporting an active and thriving lifestyle for older adults. And it's a partnership that will probably continue on for a very long time and adds a lot of credibility to their organization. So other examples of this could be, of course, a partnership with an area university or perhaps a local church, a fitness center, or even an elementary school. Those are examples of how you can leverage partnerships to promote and share Active Aging Week beyond your physical location and the residents or the older adults who make up your community or center. So think about what your community relations strategy is. And if you don't have one now, now is a good time to start brainstorming potential community partners and ideas. And I think you still have time to build community support and to create an event or sponsor something taking place in the larger local community to bring awareness to you and your Active Aging Week. So maybe you could sponsor a local walk or host a bocce ball tournament, or maybe you partner with a local elected official to support your Active Aging Week efforts. And then you want to build a network of influencers. Add them to your email list. Connect with them on Facebook. Connect with healthcare resources that share the same interest in promoting active aging. The messages you're posting and sending will resonate with them, and then ultimately they'll share to their followers. And one way to get started is by simply doing the research and really diving in and developing a list of those key movers and shakers in your market area, including their social media handles. And you'll probably already have this list started in some way, shape, or form, but continue to expand upon that list. Make sure it's organized and everything's up to date, and then spend time focusing on connecting with these individuals. And so here's a simple illustration of how quickly word can spread about your events or your positive stories for Active Aging Week and active aging in general. Share stories with bloggers, reporters, your social influencers, business partners, residents, family members, healthcare advocates. You can, like we talked about before, posting photos every day of your Active Aging Week events on Facebook, or you could create a promotional video with a fun twist for Active Aging Week. You could get residents involved and then post it on your website and your Facebook page, and then send it out via an email to residents, leads, family members about how you're recognizing Active Aging Week. Or it could be a letter from your executive director about the importance of active aging in a weekly e-newsletter that goes out to your key stakeholders.
So what are community partnerships? There are lots of places you can look, but who are you looking for? There are, from our standpoint, what we would recommend is 3 key places to look. That's business partnerships, healthcare partnerships, and charity partnerships. There are businesses that you want to think of that might sponsor your event or contribute equipment. Maybe you're having a yoga event for Active Aging Week. Well, maybe there's a gym that could provide some yoga mats, sponsored by or brought to you by that gym. You're looking at healthcare partnerships. Active aging ties right in with healthcare. These partnerships are mutually beneficial. That's really the key there. So in one instance, you might think about the local medical center, other healthcare organizations, anything you can think of that would tie in with seniors, with healthcare, being active, tie it all together and build those partnerships. Finally, charity. Active Aging Week and raising money. Sounds like a great idea, something to think about as you consider putting these things together. It's all about thinking outside the box and finding things that are just mutually beneficial. That's the key word there. So you're making your community a part of the greater community, and that's really the way you've got to think of it. There's the synergy that's really sort of illustrated in this slide. There's your community, there's the business community, and then there's your future residents community, and everything ties in together. So what benefits you, what benefits the business community, and what therefore is going to benefit those future residents and make them choose you over anybody else. It's a matter of looking at what works for us, what works for them, and you tie it in together nicely. You want to put the relate in community relations. So you start, as we talked about, by identifying potential partners. Well, once you build those partners, don't lose them. Active Aging Week's going to come around again. Other events are going to come around that you want to promote to the media. Build relationships, earn trust, whether it's with healthcare partners, business partners, charity partners, and listen to them. Engage, influence, find out what they need. How can you influence that? How can they influence you? And before you know it, you've built a wonderful partnership that you can utilize on more than one occasion. It's all about finding the shared community message. All part of the same community. How does your message tie in with theirs? How do you share it? So let's connect the dots of everything that we've talked about today. You start with your key events. In this case, it's Active Aging Week. Identify your key events, find out what's unique, find out what resonates. How do you promote it? You do so through media relations. You do so through your channels, which, as we talked about, 20 years ago, those channels that are there today didn't exist. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, your websites. Those are there now. Utilize them. Finally, community relations. All sorts of partnerships that you can build in the community, raising money, raising awareness, and you end up with the results that you're looking for, which is ultimately finding ways to get your Active Aging Week events promoted, get them mentioned in the media, and it all ties back in. It helps everybody who's involved. Everyone has fun with it, and ultimately you have a great time, which is what Active Aging Week should be all about. That kind of wraps up our presentation portion of this, and we're definitely interested to answer any questions that you might have with Active Aging Week. Here it is, the 3rd of August, Active Aging Week coming up at the end of September. If you're not in the planning stages yet, we're glad to answer some questions that might help you along.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Brandy. I do appreciate you just gave a tremendous overview of public relations from all different angles. There are a couple of questions here, but before I ask you those questions, I'd like to invite everyone who's listening to this webinar to go to that chat box and give us that signature event. What are 1 or 2 events that you're planning to host for Active Aging Week that you think would really get the media? Put those into the chat box along with any questions you might have about, well, what would you do to promote them? We'll take advantage of Jeff and Brandy while they're with us. Now, Jeff, I'm going to go back to something you said at the beginning of this webinar. And you said to find the right media in your area. It could be print, it could be broadcast or web, but how do you know what the right media is? Do you make a bunch of phone calls? Do you buy a bunch of newspapers? How do you know which media outlets would be the best fit? And then my second part of that question is, how do you connect with them? I mean, do you send them an email with a press release? Do you call and say, we'll call you? How do you do that? How do you find that media?
Well, to answer the first part of your question, Pat, it starts with, you kind of start big and then work your way down. You start with the big media. Obviously, the television stations are someone you're going to want to reach out to. Obviously, if there's a major newspaper or a couple of major newspapers in your area, you're going to want to reach out to those folks. And depending on what type of story you're trying to promote, you can get a little bit more specific. Is there, for instance, there are markets that have magazines that are for seniors only. So that would be something you want to use. If what you're promoting has to do with food, there are generally food and wine type of magazines in different markets. You want to utilize those. It comes down to really asking, what is it I'm trying to promote, and what are the publications, the websites, who are the bloggers who are going to be really interested and most likely to utilize this information. From there, to answer your question about email, email is generally one of the best ways, if not the best way, to reach out once you've drafted a press release. And there's different ways you can go about it. You can go to the news station's website itself. A lot of those sites have email addresses for particular reporters. Newspapers are the same way. You can also utilize something called Cision, which is really sort of a database that professionals in public relations and other areas use to gather those email addresses. You might even pick up some other publications that you didn't know about by utilizing that. It's really a question of just going in, compiling that data, and of course, as you know, people do move on, and so always keeping those lists up to date. And when you send a news release out, making sure that they're going to the people, that the people you're sending it to are still in charge of those areas. So that's kind of your best means of getting that out there. And then follow-up, sometimes that's email, sometimes that's phone calls, but you keep in mind that reporters are busy, and there are times when it's necessary to shoot a quick follow-up call to a news release that maybe they were interested in, but it got put on the side of their desk because something else came up. Your phone call reminds them they were interested, and the next thing you know, you've got coverage.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. I think the issue of follow-up is always one. You don't want to be too much follow-up because then people don't want to talk with you anymore. But as you say, you need to have sufficient follow-up so that folks will pay attention to what you've done.
Absolutely.
Now, one very common event that's held during Active Aging Week is a walk. I will say a walk and a roll. Sometimes it's around property, a walk around a property. Sometimes it could be through a city or in a park. Often, not always, but often with these walks, they're fairly short. People are pushing wheelchairs. Families may or may not be invited to come with them. And they enable people of all abilities, physical ability and cognitive ability, to participate in those walks. So if you were a community that had a walk, for Active Aging Week, how would you separate that? Because as you know, now there's all these charity walks and 5Ks, local ones in communities. How would you make your Active Aging Week walk stand out?
Well, I'll give you a couple of examples of communities and their different take on this that might get you to start brainstorming ideas that could work for you. But the first is a community had a walk around their community. So it was going to be maybe a couple-mile walk at best. And what they did is they were following along with a local reporter whose mission that year was to get people healthy, whether it was school lunches or older adults or just people who were stuck at the computer not getting up and moving around. So they knew this individual or this TV personality was into fitness and into wellness, and so they reached out to them and asked if they would kick off the walk for their residents. So while it didn't garner a huge amount of TV coverage in any other TV stations or in any other media outlets, it certainly got him talking about it while he was working, promoting the message and also sharing online. And it was a great way to get people excited about the walk and a different take on it. And then another story that we pitched to the media, and it was well received, was if you think about some of your residents you have there, and I'm sure everyone has those people who have been walking every day for the past however many years, and if you add up however many steps or however many miles they have taken over the years, you have a pretty impressive number. Big numbers, impressive numbers that may be a different take on, this person has walked thousands and thousands of miles and now they're walking, for a cause or to motivate other older adults to join in on this is a story. And this individual it actually was a couple, and so they met, and ever since they had been dating and married had walked together every day. So it was a good love story / fitness story that was relatable to others and inspiring. And so making it about the people rather than about the walk is something that we would definitely try to reiterate.
Oh, thank you. And the people is those human interest stories. And talking about the people help separate. Some hosts in prior years have had an experience where they send out the press releases, but then they just get put into the calendar section, upcoming senior events in our community. And those don't always reflect the kind of active lifestyle that our hosts are trying to do. Is that people's story what helps separates you from getting shunted into the calendar-only section to getting shunted to a reporter?
Yeah, if you just send the who, what, when, where, and why to the reporter, they're more than likely going to send that off to the calendar editor. And just something to keep in mind is to know the reporter, and each reporter that you're pitching to is a little bit of art and science kind of working together, but know who you're sending to, be mindful of their time, like Jeff mentioned, and give them what they want. Let them picture the story as if they were telling it to their audience. That's going to to have more impact when you're sending a pitch.
Absolutely, and I can think back to when I was a reporter, an example that sort of ties in with older adults. We were sent a press release about an air show, and normally an air show is something that we might mention something about. This was the case when I was a radio reporter, so we might mention something about it on the air, give people the details, things like that. But what was included with that release was that a World War II veteran who had been shot down in a B-29 was going to be flying in this B-29 at the air show for the first time being back in that type of plane since he'd been a prisoner of war. So now it goes from just a story about an air show that might get a quick mention on the air to we send a reporter, we do a feature, we get audio, and all of a sudden the air show becomes much more than just the air show. And that's the type of thing from a reporter standpoint that's going to make the difference between, like you said, Pat, a community calendar versus something that's going to be a lot bigger and a lot more impactful.
Boy, I wish that I could read that story. That's probably a very meaningful presentation, thought-provoking as well as interesting. You know, another popular style of event in past Active Aging Weeks has been a health fair. And this takes advantage of the community partnerships and local businesses that you mentioned. The fairs could be a larger or smaller location, and they often will bring in doctors, medical practitioners, sometimes pharmacies, social services agencies, those kinds of things, and of course give them booths and sponsorship. And the host side of Active Aging Week promises the publicity and the link to the older adults. So if they're in a community, a retirement community, then those fairs are held on the property. If it was in senior centers or parks and rec, they're held there. But the hosts have told me in the past their challenge is they want to bring in people from outside the center members or the retirement community residents from the larger community, and sometimes have a challenge getting folks to come to those kind of fairs. I wonder if the word health fair is a problem to begin with. But do you have any suggestions on bringing people from outside the community who aren't part of the usual population to big events such as that?
I would first and foremost select the audiences that you want to target and invite and make sure that they're getting invitations, whether it's personal invitations, whether it's through social media, whether it's through the associations that they're part of, and make sure that they are included in your plan. But also figure out the 2 or 3 key aspects of your event that is going to excite that particular audience, because every audience that you're trying to reach is going to be interested in something a little bit differently, and then share that message with them. So if you have a big, well-known speaker in the medical field and you're reaching out to healthcare workers, then you want to make sure they know that that speaker is going to be there, when he's going to be there, and what the focus is going to be, and how they can easily register if it's online. Just making it as easy as possible for them and showing it what's in it for them.
That makes a lot of sense, and it really implies that you have a good, strong contact list of people who you would alert, as you say, if there's going to be a physician speaking, that other healthcare providers are aware of that. I am going to invite all of you who are on the line right now, before we say goodbye, to just shoot us an email, or rather a chat box, and say this is a key event that we are going to host. How would you publicize it? Go ahead and put that into the chat box, please, and click send. And we'll put Jeff and Brandy on the carpet here to gather their suggestions. A great idea for all of you to take advantage of it. Now, Brandy, you spoke a lot about social media, the Facebook, possibly Twitter, other local websites. But you know, isn't that one where those are all invitation people? They're your core audience anyway. I was a little intrigued to hear you say sometimes reporters who are not maybe connected to a Facebook site pick it up. How does that happen?
Yeah, and just like if you and I were connected on social media, I would be getting all the information that you shared, and likewise with me. And so what we do when we create pages is we certainly start out by connecting to those individuals who we want to get our information and that we want to connect with and see our messages, in hopes that they will link back to the community's page or to our page and start engagement. And what has happened that if you have an optimized, say it's Facebook, an optimized Facebook page, and you're sharing quality stories, fun, inspiring, human interest stories, they're going to follow. They're going to see that there's a lot of engagement and buzz, and they're going to start to see what you're up to. And then from time to time, especially in smaller markets where maybe you're the only senior community or senior center in that area or one of the few, they will want to do features, especially older adults who are living an active lifestyle. If you have some unique stories to share about that, they'll certainly perk up their ears and start to follow along. Maybe they start liking your post, or maybe they reach out to you, usually in a private message, asking if they can share your story, if you can send them the photos that you posted or additional photos.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think the photos say so much, even more than the words sometimes, or certainly they lead people to the words. All right, I have a few events coming in, and the first one is this group is going for a world record. They're planning for the largest silver sneakers exercise class to go for the world record. That has to be huge. Any ideas on how to pre-publicize that as well as the results?
I would say in that instance, definitely world record is one of those reporter buzzwords that's probably going to garner some attention anyway. But again, as we mentioned before, you want to make it about the people, not just the world record, but who is going for the world record, why are they going for the world record. Try to answer some of those questions, and it sounds like an exciting event that's probably definitely going to get some coverage.
Maybe they can all wear purple sneakers or something. That would be a great photo op that would be simple and easy to post and share around.
That is a great idea. I like the purple sneakers part. I think there's plenty of orange sneakers in the stores right now too.
That is true.
What are your thoughts? We have another host who's going to have a walk in a local park. Do you think awards to hand out, awards for something, helps in terms of publicizing the event? You know, oh, come to this walk and you'll win an award, or simply to reinforce the value?
Not necessarily. Obviously, it would depend on what the award is. If you're handing out iPads, that's probably going to generate some interest. But in general, no, probably not. A walk in a local park is a nice story, and it would depend on, what are you walking for? Again, who are the people involved? What's their motivation or inspiration for walking? Those are going to be the best ways to get it promoted, much more so than offering any kind of awards or certificates or anything of that nature.
But if you look at your audience of stakeholders and outside of the media, awards are good to just build, like to keep people engaged. And maybe you could give 10 awards out and then take photos of them and post it on your Facebook page or your website to get them coming back and continuing to engage with you, to share with their friends and say, look, I won the award for the fastest walker, or whatever it may be. And they feel proud and they share with others who might be interested in your community or center and the activities as well.
And that sort of ties back into the other channels we're talking about. Just because awards might not be something that would particularly grab the mainstream media's interest, they're a great thing for social media use, and that is definitely a place where handing out awards could be beneficial.
Thinking about some of the prior activities of Active Aging Week host sites, several of them give out rewards, but they're all from that fun connection that you mentioned earlier. They were fun awards like the sneaker award for a walk, or they were gift certificate that a business donated. They weren't big things. They weren't rich things. Or sometimes they were just joke awards, you know, like a box. So it's something that was very much linked to fun and activity rather than a high level of value per se. I will also note that on the Active Aging Week website, there is a pre-planned confirmation certificate of participation that you can download. You can print, download and print, and then give out to your attendees. Well, I don't see any more questions coming in, Jeff and Brandy. I appreciate that you're willing to answer any that are put into the chat box now afterwards, and also, that you're available for any questions. I think it's been a great presentation. As I said, you really gave us so much information.
Well, we're glad to do it. Thank you very much.
I do want to remind everyone that on the Active Aging Week website, this is what it looks like. A recording of this presentation is going to be posted shortly. Look for it there. You'll find plenty of ideas for events themselves for all different people of very different physical and cognitive ability. Hosts have been very interested in inclusion and including everyone that they have. Lots of free resources. And here at the very base of the page, just as our speakers suggested, a Facebook site. This is the Active Aging Week Facebook site, so please don't hesitate to visit that, and you'll see lots of ideas. Hosts are posting their upcoming events there. I think that this has been a very informative session. It really brings to my mind the need to really focus on the people. What's unique, what's a little bit different, and who involves it in terms of your local population and your local media. So I want to extend a very large thanks to Brandy Towns and Jeff Bells of Glen Devens for sharing all this information. That's very great that you were willing to do that.